Hello, everyone. Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today is Wednesday, the 13th of April, 2022. Our topic today will be, will VMI be awakened or will it be woke? Before we get into that, I want to invite you to join me in the fight to prevent the cultural genocide that is sweeping across the South. And you can do that. I'm not going to ask you for money, but you can do that by reading my books, getting the facts that you need to defend our case, and then help get this done. But the first thing you have to do is you got to get the books, because you will get the information in my books that you really won't find most anywhere else. My latest book, The Dreadful Frauds, Critical Race Theory and Identity Politics. It's pertinent to today's talk. If you'd like to, you can get it for $16 at Amazon. If you want to get a autographed copy, it's $20 from me. I will cover postage. You can email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _Lee, L-E-I-G-H at me.com. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on the presentation. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI initiatives are frauds. Colleges, including VMI, don't need to be more, quote, woke. Instead, they need to be awakened to the fact that America is not a systematically racist and sexist country. It does not, therefore, require remedies such as race and gender-based preferences. Such preferences ultimately shift DEI practicing institutions toward quota-based mediocrities instead of meritocracies that value excellence. The focus on equality of outcomes collectively instead of equality of opportunity for the individual encourages participants to evade personal responsibility. This is a teaching of DEI, that equality of outcomes is more important than equality of opportunity for the individual. Instead of seeking personal responsibility, they seek memberships in a matrix of so-called victim groups based upon immutable characteristics such as skin color and sex. As a group member, they are empowered to cite their group identity as an excuse for their failure. As for America's alleged racism, Barack Obama's 2 presidential terms and the long line of Black immigrants trying to get into our country right now show that American systemic racism is minimal. When Obama was first elected president, Blacks composed only 12% of America's voters, compared to 76% for whites. He won only because the white vote was split in a near toss-up, 45% for Obama and 55% for McCain. Aside from America, none of the world's other major republics has elected a racial minority as their chief executive. Yet, despite 55 years of affirmative action and other racial preferences and $22 trillion, $22 trillion in more than 80 means-tested welfare programs since the start of the war on poverty in 1964, Blacks still cluster toward the bottom of all educational and economic achievements. It's time to end racial preferences and promote personal responsibility and teamwork, as VMI traditionally did with its first-year cadets, informally known as RATs. The so-called RAT line instilled personal accountability while eradicating racial bias and even gender bias in more recent years. The typical VMI cadet has long evaluated other cadets based upon their character. A cadet's conduct is what counted, not his family's wealth or social status or the kind of car he drove. And the measure of a cadet's character was strict. Traditionally, VMI's student-run honor corps prohibited cadets to lie, cheat, or steal. Non-compliant students could be drummed out of the corps. But when a recent Ralph Northam sponsored study revealed that the court convicted blacks proportionally more than their share of the student body. VMI decided to require diversity, equity, and inclusion training. They call it training. Let's call it what it is, indoctrination for all students. Specifically, blacks represented 54% of the expelled as compared to 21% of the student body. Left-leaning sociologists refer to the difference as, quote, disparate impact, close quote, which they argue must be eliminated to provide, quote, equity, close quote, meaning fairness. Their argument ignores the possibility that blacks may be more prone to break the rules. At VMI, for example, blacks are overrepresented on the major athletic teams. Some may not even have wanted a military education, but instead enrolled at VMI for the athletic scholarships and the television exposure VMI games provided. Similarly, among Americans at large, blacks account for over half of violent crimes, but represent only 13% of the population now. DEI training ignores personal responsibility. It imagines that the disproportionate impact on blacks at VMI can be corrected by such things as moving Stonewall Jackson's statue and other Confederate linked icons off campus. It is silly and encourages personal irresponsibility. VMI can give such nonsense the heave-ho, perhaps starting with the alumni. On April 9th, the VMI alumni group met in Lexington to elect a new board of directors. The slate for the incumbent faction, which appears to be sympathetic to DEI initiatives, was rejected by a vote of the dissident group. It was rejected by a voice vote because a dissident group showed up in larger numbers. Although the dissident faction was able to block the incumbent slate, the chairman of the Alumni Association ruled that group out of order when they tried to present their own slate for a vote. The dissident slate included a combination of incumbent board members and new ones. The dissidents are sympathetic to VMI's traditional values. They consider much of the DMI instruction to be contrary to the rat line and honor code. The dissidents arrived from as far away as Dallas, Tucson, Denver, and Florida. And I get the impression that the others that attended were mostly from the Virginia area. But the dissidents had a significant majority of the people attending, which might have been a total of 150 people. The meeting concluded with the chair of the incumbent group announcing that he would call another meeting that would give all 25,000 alumni a chance to vote. Well, obviously that's going to have to be done remotely because the room wouldn't hold anywhere near that many. He did not announce the date or explain how the votes would be taken. As reported in Bacon's Rebellion, according to a dissident attendee, quote, the dissident alumni were prepared for the annual meeting that happened on April 9th. They were prepared for that. The incumbent controlled association wasn't. And when the outcome was not to the association's liking, they ginned up an excuse to violate the association's own bylaws. Okay, if you would like to help VMI retain its traditional values, I'm going to provide a link that you can click on to sign a petition asking Virginia's Attorney General to stop the implementation of DNI indoctrination at VMI until he can appoint a study group to reevaluate the conclusion of former Governor Ralph Northam's so-called experts. Okay, that's our show for today, and I want to thank you for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time.